I always thought that after a lifetime of sacrifice, raising my kids, working 2 jobs, and pouring my blood, sweat, and tears into giving them the life I never had, I would be rewarded with love, respect, and maybe just a little bit of gratitude. But I was wrong. So wrong. Instead, when I got older, when my back started to ache and my hands shook more than they used to, my own children, my flesh and blood, decided I was nothing but a burden. They shoved me aside, treated me like an unwanted guest in my own house, and eventually, they banished me from the very home I had built. But here's the twist. I didn't just fade away quietly into the night. Oh no, I made a comeback so powerful, so unforgettable, that to this day my children still regret underestimating me. Was I too harsh? Was I the villain for teaching them the lesson they deserved? Or was I just a father reclaiming his dignity after being thrown out like yesterday's trash? You tell me. By the end of my story, I want you to decide. Am I the holy, or the father who finally stood up for himself? So grab a coffee, sit back, and listen closely, because this is not just a story. This is a warning, a tale of betrayal, revenge, and the sweetest justice a forgotten father could ever dream of. And before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like mine, they deserve to be heard. You ever sit in your old armchair, coffee in hand, and just watch the world go by, thinking about the life you built from scratch? That's me. My name's Walter, though everyone around here just calls me Walt. I'm 72 years old, and if you met me today, you'd see just an old man with white hair, wrinkled hands, and a stiff back that complains every morning. But what you wouldn't see is the years, the decades, the sacrifices buried in these bones. I was born poor, dirt poor, the kind of poor where dinner was bread and beans if we were lucky. My father was a factory worker, my mother a seamstress. They worked hard, but life never gave them a break. I swore when I had kids, they'd never go to bed hungry, never wear hand-me-downs with patches, never know the shame of being the poor kid at school. So I worked. Lord, did I work. By day, I was a mechanic, fixing busted engines and changing oil with grease-stained hands. By night, I stocked shelves at a grocery store. Some weeks I barely slept. Coffee and willpower, that was my fuel. And every dollar I saved went into building a future, not for me, but for my kids. I married young, my sweetheart, Margaret. She was the kind of woman who could light up a room with just her laugh. We had 3 kids, Daniel, my eldest, Rebecca, my middle child, and little James, my youngest. They were my world. I still remember the nights I'd come home dead tired, bones aching, and the kids would run to the door yelling, "Daddy's home!" And suddenly, the exhaustion would melt away. Rebecca would climb on my lap, James would tug at my shirt, and Daniel, ever the responsible one, would hand me the mail like he was already the man of the house. I thought, this is it. This is what I'm working for. Every Christmas, even if money was tight, I made sure there were presents under that tree. I'd fix toys instead of buying new ones, but the kids never noticed. Every school event, I was there, front row, cheering like a fool no matter how tired I was. I built them a tree house with my own 2 hands. And the day I signed the papers for our first home, it wasn't just a house. It was proof that all my sacrifices meant something. Margaret and I, we built a good life. It wasn't easy, but it was ours. But life has a cruel way of testing you. When Margaret got sick cancer, it knocked the wind right out of me. I sold our second car, picked up extra shifts, and still I sat by her bedside every night. When she passed, I promised her I'd take care of our kids, that I'd raise them to be strong, kind, and grateful. And I did. Or at least, I thought I did. Daniel went to college, first in the family. I worked overtime to pay his tuition, even sold off part of my pension fund to cover the last semester. Rebecca always dreamed of being a teacher, so I supported her too, even when she struggled with bills. And James, well, James was my baby. I gave him more leniency, more support, because deep down, I still saw that little boy tugging on my shirt. For decades, everything I did was for them. Do you know what it feels like to eat instant noodles for weeks so your kid can have new sneakers? or to patch your own shoes for the 5th time while your children walk proudly in brand new ones. That was me, and I never resented it. Not once, because I believed, truly believed, that one day when I was old and gray, my kids would remember. They'd look at me and say, "Dad, thank you. You gave us everything." That was the picture in my head. A warm family dinner table, grandkids running around, my kids taking care of me the way I once took care of them. That's what I dreamed of. But dreams don't always come true. The cracks started small. A missed phone call here, an excuse there. "Sorry, Dad, I'm busy. We'll visit next weekend." Next weekend turned into next month. Suddenly, family dinners felt more like chores for them than traditions. I brushed it off at first, told myself, "They're young, they've got their own lives, don't be selfish. That's what parents do, right? We sacrifice, we understand." But looking back now, maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I gave too much. Maybe I made it too easy for them to forget the sacrifices that built the foundation under their feet. Because the day would come when they didn't just forget. They erased me, and that's where my story really begins. It didn't happen all at once. Betrayal rarely does. No, it seeps in quietly like a leak under the floorboards. Small at first, almost invisible, until one day the whole damn house comes crashing down. For me, the first cracks appeared after Margaret passed away. Suddenly, it was just me at the head of the table, and the kids, well, they weren't kids anymore. They had their own lives. Daniel had a shiny new job in finance. Rebecca was climbing the ladder in education, and James floated from one thing to another, still finding himself, as he put it. First, I told myself, this is normal. Kids grow up, they get busy, they'll come around. But then the visits got shorter, the calls less frequent. "Dad, I'll come by this weekend," Daniel would say. Then Saturday came, and no knock at the door. Just a text, "Work emergency, can't make it." Rebecca, my sweet little girl who once used to draw me Father's Day cards with crayon, suddenly had plans with friends or grading to do. She'd rush through phone calls, her voice polite but distant, as though talking to me was a box to check off. And James, he changed the fastest. My baby boy, the one who once begged me to teach him how to ride a bike, started talking to me like I was an outdated piece of furniture. "Dad, you don't understand how things work nowadays," he'd say, rolling his eyes whenever I gave advice. That's old-fashioned thinking. Old-fashioned. That word stung more than any insult, because what he called old-fashioned was the very sweat and sacrifice that put food in his mouth. One Sunday dinner, back when they still bothered to come around, I noticed something. They weren't just distracted. They were irritated. Irritated by me. I asked Daniel about his work. He sighed, barely looking up from his phone. "Dad, you wouldn't get it. It's complicated." Rebecca chimed in, "Honestly, Dad, sometimes you ask too many questions. Just let us talk about other things, okay?" And James, smirking, added, "Yeah, Dad, you're not the center of the universe anymore." I laughed it off, tried to hide the lump in my throat. Of course, I said, forcing a smile. But deep down, something cracked. Do you know how it feels when your children, the very people you gave your life for, make you feel like a nuisance? Like an embarrassing relative they have to tolerate instead of someone they should cherish? That night, after they left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the half-eaten casserole Margaret used to make. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I wondered, when did I become a stranger in my own family? It only got worse from there. The disrespect grew bolder. One evening, I offered to help Rebecca with a down payment on her condo. Not because she asked, but because I knew she was struggling. Instead of gratitude, she snapped, "Dad, you don't need to solve all my problems. I can take care of myself. You always make it seem like we owe you something." "Owe me something? After everything?" I bit my tongue, swallowed the bitterness, and nodded. "You're right, sweetheart. I just wanted to help." But inside, I was screaming. Then came Daniel's wife. Oh, she was the queen bee, always polite to my face, but I could see the way she nudged him, whispered in his ear. She thought I was outdated too, an inconvenience, One Thanksgiving, she actually said, "Maybe next year we should host, Daniel. That way your dad doesn't have to stress himself out." But I wasn't stressed. I loved cooking for my family, setting the table, seeing everyone together. It was the one thing that kept me going after Margaret was gone. And here she was, gently trying to erase me from my own tradition. And James, my God, he started hinting no, outright saying that maybe I should downsize. "Dad, that big house is too much for you. Why don't you sell it? Move into a smaller place. Or better yet, come live with me and Lisa. We'll take care of you. Take care of me." What he really meant was, sell the house so we can get our hands on the money. I wasn't blind. I saw the way they looked at the house I built with my bare hands, every nail, every board. It wasn't a home to them anymore. It was an asset, a prize waiting to be claimed. And slowly, ever so slowly, the respect I once commanded as father turned into something else. An inconvenience, a burden, problem to be solved. One night, after another tense family dinner, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. They thought I had gone upstairs. Daniel said, "We can't keep doing this. He's difficult," Rebecca replied. "He's lonely, I get it, but I have my own life." And James, my own baby boy, said, "Honestly, he's dead weight. If Mom were here, she'd understand. But she's not. It's just us now. Dead weight. That's what they called me." I stood in the hallway, clutching the railing, my heart pounding like a war drum. For a moment, I thought I might collapse. But instead, I stood there in the shadows, listening as my children, spoke about me as though I were a problem to be solved, not a man who had given them everything. That was the night I knew. The betrayal wasn't coming. It was already here. You ever feel like a guest in your own home? That's how it started for me. I built that house. Every corner of it held a memory. Margaret painting the nursery before Rebecca was born. Daniel learning to throw a baseball in the backyard. James hammering crooked nails into the deck while I taught him how to hold the hammer straight. It wasn't just a house. It was my life, my love, my history. But to my children, it became nothing more than real estate. It happened one evening, an evening I'll never forget. Daniel had called and said, "Dad, we're coming over tonight. We need to talk." The way he said it, so formal, so cold, it sent a shiver down my spine. They arrived together. Daniel, sharp suit as always. Rebecca, arms crossed, lips pursed. And James, avoiding my eyes, fidgeting like a guilty teenager. We sat in the living room. The air was heavy, suffocating. I tried to lighten the mood. "I made coffee," I said, setting cups on the table. "Your mother always loved when we'd sit and talk over coffee." But none of them touched the cups. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "Dad, we've been talking, and we think it's time to make some changes." "Changes?" I asked, my stomach tightening. Rebecca leaned forward. "Dad, you can't keep living like this. Alone in this big house. It's not safe. What if you fall? What if something happens?" I chuckled nervously. "Sweetheart, I've been living here for decades. I know this house better than I know myself. I'll be fine." James finally spoke, his voice hesitant. "Dad, we think you should sell the house." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I stared at him, my baby boy, the one I used to carry on my shoulders. "Sell the house." Daniel jumped in quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. "It's the sensible thing to do. You could move into assisted living or come stay with one of us. You don't need all this space. It's too much for you to handle." I shook my head slowly, disbelief washing over me. This house is all I have left of your mother, of our family. You want me to just give it up?" Rebecca's voice hardened. "Dad, don't be dramatic. We're trying to help you. You can't keep holding on to the past forever." My chest tightened, anger and sorrow mixing inside me. The past? The past is what built you. Every brick in this house was laid with sacrifice. And now you want me to, what? Hand it over like it means nothing? James looked away, muttering, "It's not like you'll be around forever." The room went silent. The words hung in the air like poison. I stared at him, my own son, and whispered, "Is that what you're waiting for? For me to die so you can carve up what's left?" "Dad, don't twist this," Daniel snapped, his polished mask slipping for the first time. "We're just being practical. You're old. Things happen. We don't want to be stuck cleaning up the mess when you're gone." Rebecca folded her arms tighter. "This isn't about you, Dad. It's about what's best for everyone." I stood up, my hands trembling. Not from weakness, but from rage. "Everyone? Or just you three? You don't care about me. You care about the money, the house, the inheritance." They exchanged glances, the kind of guilty glance that confirms the truth. Pointed at the door. My voice cracked, but it was louder than I'd ever been. "Get out. Get out of my house." But Daniel stood too, towering over me, his voice firm, almost commanding. "No, Dad, you need to leave. This house isn't yours anymore. It's too much for you. You're not thinking clearly. We've talked to a realtor. The paperwork is ready. All you have to do is sign." I froze. My knees nearly buckled. "Paperwork? You planned this." Rebecca's voice was softer, but no less cruel. "We just want what's best for you, Dad. You'll be more comfortable in assisted living. You'll have company, nurses. You won't be alone." Alone. The irony of it all. I had never felt more alone in my life than sitting in that room with my own children plotting to erase me. I whispered, "This is my home. I built it. I bled for it. You can't just—" James cut me off sharply. "Dad, stop. You're being selfish. You're clinging to a house when you should be thinking about us. Don't you get it? You're a burden. A burden." That word shattered something inside me. I felt my heart pound, my throat tighten. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them see me cry. Not them. Not now. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and said, "If that's how you see me, then maybe I don't belong here anymore." Rebecca reached out like she wanted to touch my hand, but I pulled away. Daniel shoved the papers toward me, but I pushed them back. "No," I said firmly. "You can take your plans, your papers, your greed, and you can get out of my sight." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Daniel grabbed his coat. "Fine. Don't say we didn't try to help you," Rebecca whispered. "Dad." But her voice trailed off. She followed him out the door. James lingered the longest. He looked at me, his eyes full of something, anger, guilt, maybe both. Then he muttered, "You'll regret this," and left. The door slammed shut, and just like that, I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. I sat down in the empty living room, the echoes of their words still ringing in my ears. Burden, dead weight, selfish. I thought I'd raise children who would carry my legacy with pride. But all they saw when they looked at me was a man past his use. That night, I packed a small bag and left the house. Not because I had to, but because the walls felt colder, emptier, poisoned by their betrayal. And as I closed the door behind me, I made a silent promise. If they thought they could erase me, they had another thing coming. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. When I walked out of that house, my house, it felt like the world had collapsed beneath me. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even know where I was going. All I had was a small duffel bag stuffed with clothes, a wallet with a few $100, and a heart that felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. For the first time in my life, I was truly homeless. I rented a small, run-down apartment on the edge of town. One bedroom, leaky faucet, the kind of place where the paint peeled off the walls like old scabs. The landlord barely looked me in the eye when I signed the lease. I guess I looked like every other forgotten old man to him. Just another name on a check. The first few nights were the worst. I'd lie in that creaky bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, and all I could hear were my kids' voices. "You're a burden, dead weight, selfish." I replayed that night over and over until it carved deep grooves in my mind. And every time I thought about Margaret, what would she say if she saw this? If she saw our children, the ones we poured our lives into, turning on me like wolves? I cried. I'll admit it. A grown man, 72 years old, crying into his pillow like a boy. But when the tears dried, anger started to take their place. The days dragged on. I ate cheap meals, cans of soup, instant noodles, whatever I could manage. I stopped cooking full meals because cooking for one felt pointless. But slowly, life had a way of nudging me forward. The neighbors in the building, folks just as forgotten as me, started noticing me. Mrs. Patterson, the widow across the hall, knocked on my door one evening with a slice of apple pie. "You look like you could use some sweetness in your life," she said with a kind smile. Then there was Earl, an old veteran on the first floor, rough around the edges, but when he learned I was alone, he started inviting me to sit with him on the stoop in the evenings. We'd drink cheap beer, swap stories, and laugh about the absurdity of getting old. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt human again. It wasn't the same as family, no, but it was something. A reminder that even when blood fails you, kindness can still find you. And with that reminder came something else. Clarity. One afternoon, I was sitting in the public library, flipping through the newspaper, when I saw it, a real estate ad. Big bold letters, historic homes wanted, top dollar paid. And that's when it hit me. That house, my house, wasn't just four walls. It was leverage. It was power. My children thought I was weak, that I'd just roll over, sign their papers, hand them everything on a silver platter. But they didn't realize one thing. The house wasn't theirs. It was mine. And legally, they couldn't touch it. Not unless I let them. Suddenly, my despair hardened into resolve. I started meeting with lawyers. Quietly, discreetly. I didn't tell the kids, didn't leave a trace. I learned about wills, trusts, property rights. Every meeting, I sat there like a student back in school, taking notes, asking questions. And the more I learned, the more a plan began to form. You see, my children thought they had outmaneuvered me. But in their arrogance, they forgot I wasn't some senile fool. I was the man who had raised them, outworked poverty, survived tragedy. If I could build a life from nothing, I could certainly build a comeback from betrayal. The lonely days were still hard. Nights were long. The ache of rejection never fully left me. But beneath the loneliness, something was growing. A fire. And every time I remembered James' words, "You're a burden," that fire blazed hotter. One evening, as I sat with Earl and Mrs. Patterson, sipping on weak coffee and laughing at some silly story, I realized something important. Family isn't just blood. Family is who stands with you when the world throws you out. Family is who shares their pie when you've got nothing sweet in your life. Family is who laughs with you on a cracked stoop instead of whispering about how much of a burden you've become. And that night, as I walked back into my apartment, I whispered to myself, "They banished me, but I'm not gone. Not yet. When I come back, they'll wish they'd never underestimated me." Because revenge isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's about justice, about reminding people that the man they tried to bury is the same man who planted the seeds they now stand on. And my seeds? Oh, they were just starting to grow. After that dinner showdown, I didn't hear much from my kids. Oh, they called now and then, but the tone had shifted. It was clipped, businesslike, almost like I was a problem they had to manage. Birthdays, a text message. Christmas, package with some store-bought cookies, no personal touch. Thanksgiving, they forgot to invite me twice. But you know what the real gut punch was? One year, I drove by my daughter Lisa's house on Thanksgiving. I wasn't invited, remember? I told myself, I'll just drop off a pie and leave it at the doorstep. When I pulled up, I saw through the big living room window. There they were, all of them. My 3 kids, their spouses, my grandkids, laughing, eating, raising glasses of wine. And the chair at the head of the table, where I used to sit every year, was empty. Empty. It wasn't even filled by anyone else. They deliberately left it vacant, as if my ghost still sat there, unwanted but unavoidable. I didn't knock. I didn't leave the pie. I just drove home, parked, and sat in silence until the house felt smaller than it ever had. That was the moment I realized they had banished me. Not with words, not with legal papers, but with something far more cruel. Silence and exclusion. Now, I'm no fool. I know how the world works, and I know my children thought they had me figured out. They assumed that no matter how badly they treated me, I would still leave everything to them. The house, the savings, the land I inherited from my father. They thought they had time on their side, that eventually my old ticker would stop beating and they'd swoop in like vultures. But here's where their arrogance became my advantage. One day, I drove myself down to a law office in town. A young lawyer, fresh out of school, greeted me. She probably thought I was some senile old man coming to sign a generic will. But oh no, I had plans. Sharp, clever, and dripping with poetic justice. I rewrote my will. Every cent, every property, every possession redirected. Not to my children, but to people who actually gave a damn. My best friend Earl, who helped me fix my roof when the kids didn't have time. My neighbor Marianne, who brought me homemade soup when I was sick. Even the little library down the road, where I spent so many afternoons in silence. I left my children nothing, not a dime, not a dish, not even the photo albums they thought they could fight over. And then I did something even better. I wrote a letter. A long, scathing, brutally honest letter. One for each of them, sealed and tucked inside the will. So when the time came, they wouldn't just face the cold reality of being cut off. They'd face my words, my truth, the story they refused to hear while I was alive. But friends, here's where it gets good. I didn't just plan to punish them after I was gone. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to feel the shift in the air when they realized the old man they banished had outsmarted them. So I staged my comeback. Started small. I threw a community barbecue at the park. Neighbors, friends, church members, everyone came. Everyone except my kids. At that barbecue, I announced something shocking. I was donating part of my land to build a community garden in honor of my late wife. The applause was thunderous. The pride on my neighbors' faces, priceless, and word spread quickly. Soon, my name was in the local newspaper. Retired veteran gives back to community. Guess who read it? Yep, my children. They called, of course, pretending to care, pretending they should have been involved. But I knew the truth. They weren't proud of me. They were panicking because they realized the inheritance they thought was guaranteed was slipping through their greedy little fingers. And that was just phase one. The night before the family gathering, I sat alone in my den, staring at the old family photos spread across the table. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, school graduations. Memories that felt like someone else's life now. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what tomorrow represented. This wasn't just a dinner. This was the reckoning. For months, my children thought they had won. They thought by banishing me, by labeling me too old, too stubborn, too irrelevant, they had erased me. But I had been patient. I had rebuilt myself, found a community of people who valued me, and most importantly, I had found my voice again. Tomorrow, they'd hear it loud and clear. The next day, the sun was unusually bright, almost blinding, as if it too wanted to spotlight the truth about to be revealed. I arrived at the rented hall early, making sure everything was in place. My attorney had prepared the documents. Earl had arranged for the local paper to cover a senior's unique comeback story. And my neighbors, my real family, filled the room with warmth before my children even showed up. When they finally arrived, Daniel in his polished suit, Rebecca in her expensive heels, and Michael wearing that smug smirk, they looked around in disbelief. Rebecca hissed under her breath, "What is all this?" I stood, gripping the microphone, and let silence fall heavy across the room. "My children," I said slowly, my voice steady, "you told me I was a burden. You pushed me out of my own home. You stripped me of dignity and thought I'd fade quietly into the background. But you forgot one thing." I paused, scanning their uneasy faces. "You forgot who taught you how to fight. You forgot who raised you to never give up. And now you'll remember." Gasps echoed as the attorney stepped forward, holding the inheritance documents. Effective immediately, he announced, "Mr. Thompson has amended his will. His estate, assets, and family home are no longer in the names of his children. Instead, they are entrusted to the Thompson Community Fund, a foundation benefiting seniors abandoned or neglected by their families. The color drained from Daniel's face. You can't do this," he stammered. "Oh, I can," I replied, my voice like steel. "Because while you banished me, others embraced me. While you turned your backs, strangers stood by my side. And now, they are my true family." Rebecca's eyes brimmed with tears, but I didn't falter. Michael muttered something under his breath, but the weight of the moment silenced him. I turned back to the microphone. To every senior who has ever felt discarded, to everyone who has been told they are no longer useful, this is proof. We are not done. We still matter. And no one, not even our own children, can erase us. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. My children sat frozen, exposed before everyone. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not just victory, but vindication. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. Backhand index pointing right, but do you think I went too far? Was I wrong to cut my own children out of my life and legacy? Or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one.